Hey students, welcome to another Mr. Ness screencast. In this video, you will learn about cultural diffusion, and here are your objectives. Pause the video to look them over and get ready to copy some vocab and take some notes. Today we are looking at the fourth theme of human geography, movement, which really means the movement of people, goods, and ideas. You don't have to write this down, but you should know that the movement of people is called migration. The movement of goods we call trade, and the movement of ideas is cultural diffusion. Culture is the learned beliefs and practices of a group of people, and each specific belief or practice is called a cultural trait. We'll spend a whole unit on culture and cultural traits later in the year. The key word in the definition of culture is learned. These are things that people must be taught, which makes them unique to different groups. Remember how we talked about the idea of place, those characteristics that make a certain location unique? Culture is a big part of place because different groups in different parts of the world have different beliefs and practices. Their cultures are different. A cultural hearth is the place where a certain cultural trait originates, where it starts. And diffusion refers to the spread of a cultural trait from the hearth to someplace else. Diffusion means movement, which is the subject of today's lesson. Today we'll be looking at the different ways that cultural traits diffuse or move through space. There are two types of diffusion: relocation diffusion and expansion diffusion. And within expansion diffusion, we have three subcategories. Let's start with relocation diffusion. Relocation diffusion means that people literally get up and migrate away from the hearth, and they bring cultural traits with them to whatever new place they migrate to. A good example of this is the spread of Buddhism. Buddhism began in India, but today it's most commonly practiced in East Asia. That's because Buddhist monks left the hearth in India and migrated to other parts of Asia, bringing their ideas with them to these new places. Another example of relocation diffusion is the spread of English from England to North America via colonists who left England to travel to the New World. In both cases, we have movement of people who bring culture with them to a new place. The other type of diffusion is called expansion diffusion. Unlike relocation diffusion, expansion diffusion doesn't involve people getting up and moving. Instead, cultural traits spread outwards from the hearth from person to person. Over time, they spread to enough people that they end up in a new place away from the hearth. So we have two broad types of diffusion: relocation, which involves the migration of people, and expansion, which involves cultural traits expanding outwards. Now we're going to look at three different types of expansion diffusion. Look at your vocab sheet. I've listed these three types as subheadings under expansion diffusion to remind you that they all fall under this category. The first type is called contagious diffusion. Move this. In contagious diffusion, all people in adjacent areas, that means they are next to the hearth, adopt the trait. Contagious diffusion is like a virus. It infects everyone. A good example is a viral video. Someone makes the video and shows it to their friends, and then their friends love it, so they send it to their friends, and so on. It spreads. Another example is Facebook. I remember the first time I had heard of Facebook. It was 2004, and I had just started college. Someone came into my dorm room and said to me and my roommate, "Have you heard of Facebook?" We were like, "What's Facebook?" And he showed us, and literally that same day we had both signed up along with pretty much everyone at our college. It was contagious. Everyone wanted it. Contagious diffusion happens really fast because it spreads to practically everyone. A warning: although the spread of a disease is an example of contagious diffusion, it has nothing to do with our topic of cultural diffusion because a disease is not a cultural trait. It's not man-made. A second type of expansion diffusion is called hierarchical diffusion. Hierarchical. This is probably the most common one you'll see on the AP exam. Hierarchical diffusion means that a certain person with influence or power, it could be a religious leader or a political ruler or a celebrity, this person with influence adopts the trait first, and then other people adopt the trait as well because they look up to that person. Hierarchical diffusion involves an element of power or status. It needs someone with influence to get the ball rolling. One example is the spread of Islam back in the 7th century. The first adopters of Islam were usually wealthy merchants and kings. Because they had power and influence, other people followed their lead and adopted the religion too. My favorite example of hierarchical diffusion is these heavy metal shirts that have gotten so popular. Celebrities like Kanye and Kristen Stewart and this Kardashian sibling started wearing these t-shirts, and pretty soon everyone was wearing them. And I love seeing students in these shirts and asking them if they're a fan of the band of the shirt that they're wearing, because usually they have no idea who the band is and they give me a confused look. The last type of expansion diffusion is called stimulus diffusion. This is an interesting one. It happens when people outside the hearth adopt a trait, but they change it in some way so that the trait becomes a little bit different. It's the same basic trait, but in a slightly new form. One example is the Maharaja Mac, which is what McDonald's sells in India. It's like the Big Mac, but since a lot of people in India don't eat beef, it's made of chicken. So it's the idea of a Big Mac, it's that idea of the cultural trait, but changed. Another example going the other direction is yoga, which started a long time ago in India and is now popular in Western countries in ways that has nothing to do with following its original Hindu roots. All right, that's all for today's lesson. Please review the objectives. Oops, let me go back. Review these objectives, answer them on loose leaf, take some notes so that you're prepared for the do now. And I will see you in class. Bye, students.